Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Three-Digit World Cup 2026 qualifier results stream. It's going to be a good one. We've got qualifier results here from the past weekend worth of lobbies, plus the round of 16 map pool showcase immediately following this. I'm Dio. I'm joined by Exia and Gammy for the qualifier results.
Yeah, I mean, this is going to be a great qualifier results showcase. Looking already at the results, there is an incredibly surprising amount of teams that have from the prediction rosters. Just a little bit off of the predictions, but nonetheless, it's going to be a great stream.
Yeah, definitely. Very stoked to see the lineup of teams that we've had this year. I mean, I'm looking in particular at one big country in the top three that I'm personally a big fan of, and I'm sure a lot of people in chat are too, but guess we'll have to wait and see. Without further ado, I don't think we want to dilly-dally any longer. Dio, I think we can take it away.
Yeah, without any further stalling, let's move on to our last seeded team. Somebody has to be last. And unfortunately for them, this year, seed number 27 is Czechoslovakia. It's a three-player roster, right? They only had these three players, so unfortunately not having a good time on some of these maps.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, with a three-player roster, you're going to have to be playing every single map that the qualifiers has, and unfortunately, it will not be able to grab a single point on the P scores, but they do have some great scores to look at. I mean, Noma 1 overall pretty average in terms of aim scores, but not last at least. DT2 is a little bit of bright days for Civiad, as that is an FC on the DT2, but overall that is probably the only outlooking scores in this qualifier results for them.
Yeah, it's overall a shame looking at this Czechoslovakia roster, right? I think throughout their past participations in 3WC in general, I think they've always had, one or two players who, were big carries for them in the past that had just either left the game, became inactive or whatnot, and they just haven't been able to find any sort of rebuild. But honestly, props to them for still playing qualifiers throughout. I know there are a lot of teams that could field three players for 3WC, and yet still didn't find the motivation enough to play. So gotta respect the team that is still trying their best to put something on the board, even though they might not feel the most inclined to. So yeah, kudos to Czechoslovakia.
Yeah, and good luck to them next year as well. Now on to our next seeded team, another DNQ team. Seed 26 is going to be Sweden here, another non-full roster. And I think for a lot of people, very notably, no Skilla this year for Sweden. Their historical best performer across many different rank range World Cups, 3WC, OWC, 4WC. So not having a powerhouse there really did hurt Sweden this year.
Unfortunately, they did not have all the skills that they could attribute to every single skill set. No mods are a little low, hiddens also low. The only possible good score that they have is on the speed map. DT2, number 8 overall for qualifiers. You have an up-C from Trump and Tim Power at 1 million both apiece. So those are the only outlying scores right here. But nonetheless, not a lot of powerhouses to do all the things that a World Cup winning team has.
Yeah, not crazy amount of powerhouses as you said, right, Xia? But one thing to note in comparison to the previous team that we saw before Czechoslovakia is that Sweden, with 2 more players, instantly see a huge increase in terms of their qualifier scores. I mean, maybe not on the hidden 1 and hidden 2. I mean, those are just one placement improvements. But on all of the rest of the maps, you can see them having significant higher scores, and you see a lot more fluctuation in their scores in terms of their placement. And that's just the power of having more players, having more roster diversity. And it'll be interesting to see this sort of dynamic as we move on higher in this seed review, where we see where we can compare a lot of our 5-man rosters to our 6-man rosters in terms of their overall diversity and their ability to field 3 during the course of this qualifier.
All right, and now on to our next seeded team, it's unfortunately another cursed year for this team. Seed 25 is going to be Singapore.
Ugh.
Their best placement so far was a DNQ at seed number 18 back in 2019. They did not play last year, and unfortunately, this year will not be the year either.
Yeah, I'm unfortunate. I mean, there is some pretty prominent 4WC players that have played for Singapore, as like Q Astronaut, Koyo as well. But unfortunately, not a lot of good scores. You do have some hope in the hard rocks and a little bit more in the mechanics, but not enough to get yourself propelling into even close to the seed 16 placement.
Yeah, at the end of the day, with how competitive this year's 3WC was, I mean, I was kind of seeing this coming, right? Singapore's in the state of quite a big rebuild. You know, we are far from our glory days where we used to have the Monaco just terrorizing our tournaments for us. And with that now, I think it's going to take a few more years for Singapore to find their footing in the world scene. We kind of sort of have something going for us in terms of, you know, the hard rocks and the DTs, the mechanical side of things, but on, you know, some of the more conventional no mods, as well as, you know, especially the hiddens, you know, we definitely still have some room to grow. So kudos to my brothers, thanks for playing, and good luck next year, guys.
I want to shout out that Hard Rock 2 placement, number 8 overall, 2.2 million team score, was their highest actual score and by far highest placement. So very solidly done there, but unfortunately not enough. And in much the same way, not enough for our next seeded team, seed number 24, a team that actually did qualify last year, Greece, dropping down to seed 24 from 16th seed and a top 16 finish last year. Not enough this year, guys.
Not enough powerhouse. I mean, you could already see that top player, Jack Pax, number 10, piece score overall, number 10th on the match cost. Crazy scores, especially that hidden one FC, an absolute demon on the aim control. Did not play the DT2, had to leave it up for Puyo, Nickid, and Bobman to play that DT2. But you got to give a shout out to that hidden one and Hard Rock 1 scores. Very good at the mech tech, very good at that aim control. But nonetheless, not enough powerhouses and not enough great performances.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly wouldn't say that there are not enough powerhouses on Greece. I just think that the rest or the supporting lineup for Greece is just not strong enough for them to be able to pull through, right? You have Jackpacks, you have Puyu, who historically have been known to be the main core of Greece, but just the other two players unfortunately unable to fill in those gaps, especially when you reorient yourself to the qualifier, to their individual or their team performance in qualifiers, and you notice that, you know, on some of the more unaccessible maps, you know, on some of the more tricky maps, you have No Mod 3, Hidden 1, Hidden 2, and Hard Rock 1. You know, you see these players, you see this team getting a honestly very, very high seeding, C12 and 9 on, you know, a combination of all these picks. But on the more accessible picks, such as No Mod 1, such as DT1 and DT2, this team really falls short, and I think that just speaks to, you know, the requirement or the roster diversity and overall team performance that's just required on these more accessible picks that Greece just simply wasn't able to fill this time around.
Yeah, and unfortunately not going to be enough for them to make it in, so better luck next year to Greece. And now on to our next team. It's our second combination roster, Imperio Rio Platense, not going to be making it in here either this year. They were seed 21 last year, and unfortunately subbing out Rico this year, I believe, for VCOB Like, and not running with VCOB Like in qualifiers. Not sure if it was just scheduling or what, but not going to be able to make it into the round of 16 this year.
They have good performances all overall for the players themselves. I mean, you have 4 people top 100 in match cost for qualifier results. You have at least one map, No Mod 3, in the top 10. And shout out to that Hard Rock 1 score on Rebo, 810k. I believe that is almost top, but that is a really good team performance, but not enough, unfortunately. Since we're in the 3-digit World Cup, it is an absolute intense battle.
Yeah, it's honestly heartbreaking to see. Like in normal round of 32 brackets, you see these like seed 14, seed 9, seed 10, seed 12 placements, and you'd honestly think that these would hit pretty damn high. But at the end of the day, it's 3WC, only top 16 teams qualify. It's just simply not enough.
Yeah, just have to do better. The consistent, 1 to 1.5 million team score or 1 to 2 million team score, not really cutting it on a lot of these maps. Let's move on to our next seeded team, number 22. Homeland for one of the hosts here, Finland, not going to be making it in. I'm a little surprised at this. Amacetic, Isaac, Nev, Margis, and Mike Tyson not going to be qualifying in for the 3-digit World Cup.
Yeah, not any top 10 scores all around. They are good overall throughout their entire maps, but not good enough scores to try and propel their P score up into that seed 16.
Yeah, I mean one of the larger differences in our seed differentials from their previous performance last year, right? Seed 10 all the way down to 22 is definitely something that's pretty damn heartbreaking if you're a Finland fan. And yeah, I would know, I was a believer, but 07's GG's. Just good luck next year. Hopefully they will to reclaim some of their former glory.
All right. And unfortunately, also not making it in this year at seed number 21 is going to be Ukraine. Full roster, but with Art Lost not playing the qualifiers. And again, a pretty similar story, okay scores on a lot of the more straightforward maps, especially those DTs, number 4 and number 6 there, but just not enough on some of the less straightforward picks to be able to make it into the round of 16.
Give some props up for those DT scores, especially no one loves. I've seen both of those DTs maps and Bid Tactic as well on that DT2, but overall, the DTs aren't enough to get yourself into that top 16, which is unfortunately why they're unable to play this tournament.
Yeah, another one of these rosters that can be effectively considered like a 5-man roster in this qualifiers. I'm not too sure what the situation with Art Lost was, but perhaps if they were, available, or if they were a stronger force or stronger presence in this qualifiers, there might have been the extra depth that Ukraine would have needed, especially on, some of the no mods or some of the hiddens, especially to find that qualification placing. But it is still an improvement from their placing last year, so I gotta give them props.
All right, getting a little bit closer to that qualifying mark now, just failing and just falling short of qualifying at seed number 20. No. Our next team up is going to be Japan. Pretty solid placement there on the Hidden 1 as well as on the DT2. A couple of other solid runs on Hidden 2 and Nomad 1, but again, just not quite enough. And at this point, with seed number 20, we're in the realm where your average team score across all of the maps is pretty much equal with the bottom 4 qualifying teams. So from here on, the next 8 teams in a row are all within about 70k average team score of each other. So it is an incredibly close qualifying field here, and that's why I started this team off saying that this is really where you get close to qualifying.
Yeah, and just to go on Dio, I mean, when you look at the P score later on, and when you get the reveal of the qualifier results, you can see we are going by absolute decimals of close. Props to that Hidden 1 score, top 7, especially 600k and above for across those 3 players, top scoring. And give also your props to Rikuima for that 12th place on match cost overall. Perma lobbying as well, getting an FC on Noma 1 and DT2 as well. So unfortunately, not going to be qualifying this year, but it is an improvement for their seed from last year.
Yeah, definitely. Unfortunately, I love to be a Japan fan, but this year just was not it. GG's Japan, and good luck next year.
Yeah, and unfortunate for them, and unfortunate, honestly, for the next 3 teams as well. Next up in DNQ, just below that qualifying mark, seed number 19 is Thailand. This team not playing last year, and I believe it's maybe their first year in the 3-digit World Cup. I'm going to double check that. No, they did actually play in 2023 and fell just short that year as well, seed number 17 in 2023. Not going to be able to make it in this year as well. Number 4 on Nomad 1, number 5 on Nomad 3, number 8 on Hidden 1, but it's these other maps where they fall short that really drag it down. The Nomad 2, the DT2, the Hard Rock 1, that prevent them from qualifying by a very close margin once again this year.
Yeah, and we're gonna mention the IP score once again by decimals, and by the average increase Orbital from their next seed is about by 50k. So that's how close these seedings are right now. C19, nothing to be disappointed about, as you are just off by a couple of placements or just a couple of mishaps or combo breaks. But shout out to that Nomad 1, number 4, almost a top 3 score, as well as that Nomad 3 and Hidden 1, 3 top 10 scores, but not enough in the Hard Rocks and as well as the DTs, putting you down into C19.
The roster depth for Thailand this year is also very nice. I mean, having just 2 players that can instantly take off the headache that is playing DT from Tripuk Chep and Fuzzy U is very, very good, allowing Liz Perry to, really orient themselves and put their focus into the rest of the match. Although it didn't quite work this year, I think this is a pretty good indication of just how important having a 6-man roster is when it comes to ease of qualification.
Yep, and unfortunately, even with the full 6-man roster, not going to be enough for Thailand. 2 more teams to go before we get into the qualifying teams here. The last 2 to not make it in to the round of 16. Number 18 is going to be the United Kingdom. Seed 8 last year, a top 6 finish for this team last year, now down to seed number 18 and not qualifying in the 3-digit World Cup 2026.
I believe it was mentioned that they're on a LAN right now. I do need to recheck my memory if that was ever mentioned, but yeah.
They played on a Tuesday, and we're at LAN this weekend.
And we're at LAN this weekend. Okay. Yeah, a
Powerful.
little bit of jet lag, a bit of a setup difference maybe, but I don't think so. But this is an absolute surprising team and country to see in the bottom of the qualifier results. But seed 18, only 2 spots off for that qualifying. So that's unfortunate.
Yeah, the loss of Listia and I believe Easy Chop from their previous roster last year really had them taking a pretty big hit on all of your hiddens, all of your gimmick security as well. I mean, you might have the big star of the show, obviously, yeah, Bubbleman, but at the end of the day, you need more than just Bubbleman. You need some strong performers from in other places, and it just seems as though, even though some of these new bloods coming in, SyncQHD in particular, are pretty damn strong, all things considered. It's just you just need something extra, man. That's just how competitive 3WC is this year. When you see this kind of team from the UK being unable to call.
Yeah, and I will say, you do have some of that really good support on the Double Time 2, for example, and you have some pretty high scores overall, right? 2.2 million on the Nomad 1, 1.9 million on the Hard Rock 2, but those are overall pretty high scoring maps. Same goes for the DT1, so it's just a little unfortunate there. Your maybe not so fun fact for this qualifier, Rebelman is the highest match cost player on a non-qualifying team. So 9th overall in the match costs from qualifiers, happens to be the highest out of any non-qualifying players. Jackpack's in a very close second at 10th place. And that'll take us into our very last, unfortunately, non-qualifying team, seed number 17. Our last non-qualifying team is Norway. Paper Candle, Hunder, Melver, Penguinzi, Zubs, and Varek not making it in to the round of 16, despite the number 1 placement on DT2 and despite 2 top 10 performances on the Nomad 2 and Nomad 4 as well.
Yeah, I mean, that DT2 score, it almost propelled them into the qualifying place. But if you look at seed 16, which we will see later on, you are off by literally 1.11 points off of qualifying. So unfortunately, it is that close. And especially seeing these scores at 2 million on Hard Rock 2, 2 million on DT1, and 2 million on Noma 1, you've got to realize that everyone is putting up their best scores in this qualifier results. And that's what makes 3-digit World Cup so competitive.
Yeah, I think another thing that really brought Norway down is just how polarizing all of their scores are, right? You have, yes, we have the number 1 on DT2, but we also have number 25 on Nomad 38, number 25 on Hidden 2, number 23 on Hard Rock 1. And it just goes to show that, you know, when qualification is this tight, you can't just rely on one strong showing to propel your team all the way up in terms of your seeding. And it just seemed as though, you know, that was almost the case for Norway, but that just isn't the case this year.
Yeah, and Norway needing to borrow some reading players from their 4-digit World Cup team, I suppose. A little unfortunate there. I think more unfortunate the fact the last 2 teams in a row, both Norway and the UK, actually higher average score than our next team that qualified. Seed number 16 squeaking in with actually a lower average score than Norway and the UK, Austria-Hungary, making it in as seed number 16. Last year, they qualified as seed 15 and proceeded to get top 8. So despite the low qualification, this is still a team to watch out for. Akama no Tenshi, Fedora Goose, Z9A, Defi, Nekayase, and Z10A, who was missing the last 3 weeks of Hippo Cup, also did not play qualifiers here in the 3-digit World Cup.
Yeah, congratulations nonetheless. Look at the scores, DT1 and Noma 1, the only scores in that top 10, which means that if you're able to qualify in this kind of fashion, you are having incredibly consistent scores. I mean, look at that. Noma 4, Hard Rock 2, really close to that top 10. The most lacking ones are kind of those gimmick maps as Hidden 2 and as well as DT2, so speed's kind of lacking. But nonetheless, seed 15 to 16, you still qualified. But let's see if you can still make that top 8 placement like you did last year.
Yeah, definitely. I think this tanking and seeding could definitely be attributed to Z10A just not being present for this course lobby. Could definitely see them getting a much higher seeding if they had their 6th player as a fill. And yeah, I mean, fan favorite team Austria-Hungary. I think a lot of people are rooting for these guys, especially given their dark horse performance in 2025. And I personally can't wait to see what kind of hell they release in the bracket stage of this tournament. So, good luck, have fun.
Yeah, good luck indeed. Although I'm not sure if they need it, having gotten top 8 last year. I think they'll be wishing the other teams good luck instead. Let's move on to our number 15th seeded team. Another one of these teams with a very, very close average score. It is New Zealand, qualifying in seed number 15. For context, Austria-Hungary, 1.64 million average team score. UK and Norway, 1.64 and 1.65 million average team score. New Zealand, again, 1.65 million average team score, but just slightly more consistent across all of their placements. Number 5 on Hard Rock 2, number 7 on DT2, number 9 on DT1, number 10 on Nomad 2, number 11 on Nomad 3. It's these consistently high placements that bring them into the round of 16.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's all the consistency we've talked about. You can not only have those power scores on one map and then drop all the rest. This is why they're considered one of the more like underdogs of the tournament, or even the underdogs of World Cup history. But yeah, as a 7/8 as Oceania, I mispronounced that twice, so I'm gonna stay quiet about that. But yeah, you can see the scores. Hard Rock 2 to DT2. They did warm up, and getting warmed up, they got a lot better as the runs went by. I don't believe they got any better scores on their second run, but if they did, props to them and qualifying for the 3-digit World Cup 2026.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, New Zealand has been on the rise ever since ever since last year's OWC, pardon me. And despite the fact that they split with Australia, since their previous lineup as Oceania. I mean, both New Zealand and Australia did very, very well for this year's qualifiers. I mean, in particular, I'm pretty sure a lot of eyes will be looking at Osber and Milbus this 3WC, and rightfully so. I mean, look at their performance. I believe Osber getting a very, very solid seed 37 in individual placements. Before we move on, I also like to mention, I mean, this is a very, very good representation of just the importance of having a diverse roster, right? Once again, you have the same case where you have basically 3 players coming in for exclusively the speed. and Hard Rock 1 in Ha Sapi. And for that reason, I mean, New Zealand just has that much more roster depth, and it's reflected in their, spike up in scores in both DT1 and DT2, really letting Osbam and Milbus, alongside Pi, really reorient themselves and focus going into the rest of the pool.
Another one of these very, very close teams in terms of average score in the top 16. Our 14th seed out of qualifiers this year. Drumroll, please. Going to be Indonesia coming in at seed number 14. One score in the top 3 on that Hidden 1. Another solid placement on the DT1 as well, and a couple of solid other placements on maps like the Hidden 2, the Nomad 1, the Nomad 3, the Hard Rock 1. Once again, just a well-rounded roster. It did flop on the DT2, but otherwise had a relatively solid run across pretty much all of the maps. No surprises there, with a couple of mainstays like Mindfrost, Hakuikyouri, and GNX.
I'm going to give so many props to that Hidden 1 score. That map is an absolute aim control fest to go through. So if you are going into aim control into this team, be careful, as they are ready to shine on that kind of map set, but especially on that DT2, just lacking on the mechanics. So a lot of weaknesses and a lot of strengths being shown in different places, but overall, great showing. And especially 3 players in the top 40 to be precise, for Indonesia: Mindfrost ID, Hakuikyouri, and GNX. An absolute baller performance, and as well as that No1 FC on Norland. So don't count them out too.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very pleasantly surprised by Indonesia's qualification. I think I was on the downside. I was a bit of a downer when it came to Indonesia this year, but I'm very happy to be proven wrong. Once again, kind of similar to the previous team that we saw before, where you just have some players who come in exclusively for the mechanics, and that's what really rounds out your roster at the end. Similar case to what we saw before, and I think overall it really worked out well for them. It is also one of those cases where one single bad performance doesn't outweigh an entire qualifier's worth of good performances. And overall, as long as they try to pick away from the DT2 perhaps, I think they'll have a very, very good run in the bracket stage.
Quick fun fact about Indonesia: they had the 4th most improved run on Run 2 of any team, and that was this Hidden 1. Their first run on Hidden 1 out of 54 scores on the map was 31st, down at 1.4 million team score. And they improved up to number 3 out of 54 on their second run by over 900k. So very, very well played second run there from Indonesia. And let's move in to our next team up here. Seed number 13. Going to be the Philippines, qualifying into the top 16. Last year, they were seed number 7, and they placed 4th. So a bit of roster changes, I believe, with the Philippines, potentially changing things up this year, but still looking pretty solid coming into this year with some very solid scores in the first half of the map pool.
Yeah, and you're seeing a lot of more one-digit placements for these maps. Nomad 2, Nomad 4, Hidden 2. I believe a lot less mechanics than last year is a reason why they placed seed 7 overall in 2025 and got into that finals losers bracket in the placement 4 for that 2025 World Cup. But nonetheless, you do have your carries, Ikarusi and Nathan Ram 1918. Absolutely doing what they do best. Top 20 on overall match cost is an absolute insane thing to see, especially playing 20 maps over 2 runs. So props to Philippines for qualifying this year.
Yeah, Philippines has been one of my favorite rosters, and they are going to continue to be one of my favorite rosters this 3-digit World Cup. And if anything, I honestly think that this seeding performance from Philippines is actually an underperformance of what they're capable of. I definitely saw Philippines placing within the top 8 during my predictions. And for that reason, I think Philippines will be a country to look out for. And I mean, how can you not look out for them when they have literal Nathan Ram 1918 on their team? One of probably, arguably one of the strongest players in 3WC in general. Yeah, and before we move on, huge shouts to Icarusy for being one of the few players to play every single map this qualifiers. Just insane performance overall, and I love to see this player continuously improve.
Yeah, I'm definitely more scared of the Philippines the later stage this tournament gets to, because
yes.
their core 4 roster, the top 4 players on the team there, are very, very scary the later this tournament goes. So I think 13th seed is maybe a little bit of an under prediction from qualifiers there. Let's move in to our next seeded team. Going into the 12th seed out of qualifiers, it is the Russian Federation. No super standout scores aside from that number 3 on the DT1, but once again, nothing below seed number 20 on any of their maps, that one being the Hard Rock 1. So just an overall very solid qualification run here for Russia. No obvious super exploitable weaknesses, but no top 1 on anything, just that number 3.
Yeah, I believe the only top one we have seen so far in this showcase is on Norway, which has not qualified for that DT2. I believe we're going to see some soon, but overall, great scores, a little bit more top 10s, top 15s to get so they can get themselves into seed 12 this year. They get the same seed as their placement, but one off from last year. So as a very exciting team to watch, as well as the core here, Maxim, Raymia, and Gamer as well. So this core and this team, please look out for them during the bracket stage.
Yeah, it's always a few question marks being drawn, right? Whenever you look at a Russian team in a World Cup, you never know what they're doing in the Russian scene, even though you know that their scene is bustling. And for what it's worth, I think this Russian team is extremely well-rounded. I don't think any single one, none of their performances across all of these qualifier maps drop below the 20th placement, and they have the extra punch in the DT1. So mechanics is going to be the strat for this Russian roster. And yeah, kings of consistency as well. Last year they were seed 11, this year only dropping down by 1 into seed 12. Definitely, again, going to look out for Russia just by nature of how many players that they could have probably filled for this entire roster, and yet still being able to and yet still only getting seed 12. That's a bit suspect for me.
Yeah. Well, let's see how well they're able to do this year. 5 different players actually for Russia this year, so big roster swap. Let's move into the next team up here. Seed number 11, qualifying into the round of 16, is France. Number 3 for them as well, being a highest placement, this time on the Nomad 2. France, traditionally a pretty good Nomad 2 team, and once again, pretty consistently high placements across everything. Number 20 and 21 and 19 on the Hidden 2, DT1, and DT2 respectively, so a bit of a DT weakness for this team. But otherwise, 11th and higher on all 7 of the other maps. So just those 3 maps is a weakness.
Yeah, and you have to give a shout out for all 6 players. Every single player has reached top 100 in match coach, which means that this roster is ready to get their guns unloaded. They have incredible hidden 1 scores. They have good tech, aim, as well as a really good aspect. I mean, you could look at Hard Rock 1 and Nomad 1, both mech tech and the aim Hard Rock 2 as well. And then Nomad 2, be careful for tech streams flow and really aimy kind of maps too for that Nomad 2. But seed 14 last year, placement last place for 13 and 16, but seed 11 this time, and I believe they're looking for their first map win.
I think the stocks are definitely looking up for this French roster this year, and I really like this French roster because I think this is one of the first rosters where you don't really see like a sharp carry from any player. Of course, you have star players definitely notably in Hifiki and Musty, but then again, you look at the rest of their roster and they just have a lot of diversity in their players, and that's what I really like about this French roster, right? Being able to have that roster depth going into the bracket stage, while still having your specialists, notably in Jap White, who outperformed his team on the double times by a very, very large margin. Definitely there to sort of alleviate that speed weakness, and doing very well in that pursuit, definitely. So yeah, I'm it's looking up for this French roster. I am definitely looking forward to see how they play in the bracket stage, and I think their overall strategy is going to be determined on how well they can either play around Jeb White on the double times or how well they can play away from the double times.
Yeah, definitely looking forward to seeing France in this year's 3-digit World Cup, especially after the kind of rebuild that they had last year before and during OWC. Continuing to see that is great. Let's move into our next team up. Seed number 10, getting very close to that middle of the pack, is Australia. Last year, they did not play because they were combined with New Zealand as Oceania. And this is our first team that we have with a number 1 and number 2 placement. Number 1 on the Nomad 1, number 2 on that Hidden 2. On top of that, no placement below top 18. Their lowest placement being on that Nomad 2. Zintex, Xaver, Paler, Drox, Sake, and Sayo looking pretty solid in the qualifiers this year.
Yeah, I mean, this reading roster is going to be an absolute joy to watch. You definitely got to watch out for the free mods, and especially the anti-mods and the low AR rating that comes with the Nomad and Hiddens. I'm excited to see this AIM roster play any AIM, as that is an absolute demon team score at 2.8 million for Nomad 1. Zintex has unfortunately fallen off that FC to achieve the 3-way. But the AIM roster for this Australian team is going to be an absolute joy to watch.
Yeah, the way that a lot of people can look at this Australian roster is to think about it like it's the OWC roster but without their hyper carries. And I think 3WC is going to be a big building point in Australia's roster in OWC moving forward later on in the year, because you have a lot of previous OWC players from 2024 in Sayo and Zintex coming back for this year's 3WC. And you know, a lot of question marks are as to whether they can really outperform themselves in this in the 3-digit World Cup. One thing I'd like to mention notably, however, is that Sayo only played one map this entire qualifiers, which is a bit shocking to me, considering that this was the player who got the Burning Star score of, arguably, quote unquote, the Burning Star score of 2024. So, a few question marks being raised for this Australian roster, and I think these question marks will continue to be raised, pardon me, as you move into the bracket stage. Just looking at their qualifiers performances, you notice this is probably the most polarizing country that we've had. They get number 1 on Nomad 1 and then number 18 on Nomad 2 immediately after. Like, what is happening? Does this team have the depth that is required to really sustain themselves in the long run, or are they just a one-trick Andy? That's going to be the question going into the bracket stage for Australia.
Well, see if they can find the depth required on some of these other picks outside of those specialty picks, especially with how, honestly, I think difficult this Hidden 2 ended up being. It's going to be interesting to see. On to our 9th seeded team and the last team in the bottom half of qualifying teams. Seed number 9 this year, also our last combination team, is Iberia. Combination of Portugal and Spain on the same team. Aleph, What's Up, Rafamat, Townie, Decore, and Escrupulio. Number 2 on the Nomad 1, number 3 on the Hard Rock 1, number 22 on that Nomad 3, but very solid qualifications and placements on pretty much everything else. And they're going to be right smack in the middle of those qualifying teams after last year being seed 17 and not even making it in to the 3-digit World Cup.
Yeah, this is an incredible team. I mean, the AIM, as well as the Australia team, very good AIM team. You could always look at this team as another great AIM team as well. And especially on that Nomad 1, They did have a team score of about around 2 million, but they did play their second run and they increased it by 763k, and that propelled them into that second seed spot for this Nomad ones. Last year seed the 17, but this year not so much, right in the middle of the pack where they'll be facing seed 8. Just a little bit of unfortunate mishaps on the alt map Nomad 3, so maybe aim control, maybe alt is something you can attack upon this Iberia team.
Yeah, Iberia seems to show a very clear weakness in the whole genre of skill set, which is that control. I mean, from Nomad 3 all the way to Hidden 2, they hit significantly lower than their overall average. But everywhere else, I mean, they are doing extremely well, you know, especially the Nomad 1, especially the Hard Rock 1. Aim mechanics and mechanics consistency is definitely going to be a very good tool for Iberia going into the bracket stage. But how far they get, once again, it's going to be dependent on how well they play away from, you know, their weaknesses in control.
Good luck to Iberia in the round of 16. Up against our very next team in the qualifier results, seed number 8, facing off against Iberia in the round of 16 is Brazil. Seed number 3 on both Nomad 1 and Nomad 4. Number 4 on that Nomad 2. Number 2 on the Hard Rock 2, and a couple of other top 10 placements on the Hidden 1 and the Hard Rock 1 as well. Looking very good across a wide variety of maps for this team that relies very heavily on Schwick, Izzy, and Korea Maluko for most of the pool, and then on Korea Maluko, Teiko, and Hirata for those speedier maps and hard rocks in the latter half of the pool.
And especially Monty missing, that is one of the big players for this team. So I don't know what happened there, scheduling issues or unavailable, but I believe this Brazil team has so much left in store for them. I believe their depth is a lot more deeper than last year. Unfortunately, they did get upset into a top 12 seeding, or excuse me, top 12 placement last year. But look at those scores: Nomad 1, Nomad 4, and Hard Rock 2. This is as close as we can see to every single map being at least top 10. It's just that those DTs unfortunately remove that placements and could have been a little bit higher in placement, but that is going to be the mechanics being a huge weakness for Brazil going on forwards.
Yeah, I mean, it's very easy to talk about like Korea Maluko in this Brazilian roster, right? Because it literally is Korea Maluko, the face of Brazil. But I don't want to discount Izzy in this lineup. I believe the second highest performer overall in the individual rankings, right behind Shaquille. At number 17, Izzy, I believe, came in at number 28. So definitely not a player to underrate in any sense of the word. I think going into the bracket stage, Brazil is definitely going to have to find some roster depth somewhere down the line, because right now they're, for everything but their double times, they're really just fielding 3 players. So the question mark becomes, what if one of them don't show up? What if one of them have a bad day? That's definitely where Brazil's cookie begins to crumble. But nonetheless, I really it's the story of 3WC, man. You have like 3 carry players for the entirety of calls, and then you just have the goats on double time. And I think the DT roster, or the speed specialist for this roster, really round up the whole. And I really like this Brazilian roster overall. I mean, they have very good stuff. I think we've talked all about, you know, their standout performances in Nomad 1, 4, and Hard Rock 2 as well. So definitely going to be a relatively strong mechanics team, and you know, they have strengths all over the place just by nature of having a very flexible 3-man core.
All right, let's move on to our 7th seeded team here. I think you two have said just about everything that needs to be said for Brazil. Good luck to them versus Iberia, and good luck to Iberia as well in the round of 16. Number 7 out of qualifiers is Romania. Last year, they qualified in as seed number 12 and matched their seeding. Let's see if they can do it again and improve by a placement up to top 8. Their matchup this year going to be Australia, and the first team with multiple number 1 placements on both Nomad 3 and Hidden 2.
Yeah, you got to give props up to Badu being number 6 overall for team score rank. Did not perma lobby, but is enough to get that huge placement. Origin and Eternum as well, doing great stuff for the Nomads and the DTs. And this roster thought it would lack a little bit on the mechanics, but DT seems like a good placement for them. Hard Rocks do reflect a little bit off of the precision and a little bit off the mech tech, and especially some low rolls on the aim of Nomad 1, Nomad 2, and especially the hidden map, hidden 1, so aim control just a little bit off. But C7, especially with some of these lower scores, is an absolute incredible placement. Last year C12 placement, C12, but hopefully they can get a lot higher placement this year.
Yeah, a few question marks were drawn during the prediction stream as to how well Romania will do. And I think the addition of Capybaras really rounds out their roster as a whole, right? Of course, you're always going to have Badu and Origin, who are the main standout carry performance. I mean, number 6 and number 14 respectively, what are we doing? Insane stuff from all of them. But, you know, Capybara is really there to be that third man for Romania. Definitely rounds out their roster by quite a bit. However, I am a bit worried as to how well this team will fare into the later SR rounds, where we're expecting, you know, quite a few players, Eternan and Capybaras, to probably fall short when it comes to the SR. And once again, story of Romania, is Badu's carry going to be enough on the gimmicks? Because if you're looking at both their number 1 performances, you're seeing Badu get 900k and 800k on Nomad 3 and Hidden 2 respectively. I'm not too sure how high those map rankings are individually, but if anything, like, it just goes to show how strong, how integral Badu was in, you know, their overall, in propping up their overall placements on these star performing maps for Romania.
Well, if qualifiers is anything to go off and those continue being difficult picks in the bracket stage, then Romania will be very well served by Badu on those picks. Let's go ahead and move on to the first team in the top 6. And the first of those teams expected to make the finals weekend, number 6 out of qualifiers, is South Korea. Bit of a change in the roster this year for South Korea. A lot of swaps in here and some new talent. Amamiya Kokoro returning, Alagrisimo returning, Petite, a newer player, Chipori, formerly known as Parisia, Sherbet, a new player, and then, of course, My Keyboard, their OWC rookie from this year as well. Number 2 on the Nomad 2, number 1 on the Nomad 4, as if there was ever any other expectation for South Korea.
Yeah, I mean, this matchup against France is going to be a good one. You have an AIM team versus a somewhat more techie, somewhat more hidden-orientated team. And so a lot of polar opposites between France and South Korea. Nomad 4 is a score I will give props to, as that map is not at all easy because of just tech being an absolute aspect of this tournament, going to be incredibly difficult. So just look out for Nomad 4s in the future. Look out for hidden 1s in the future as well, considering that not a lot of huge DT scores as well. So DT mechanics, not a huge point for this team.
Yeah, this is a very South Korean looking qualifiers performance, right? From Nomad 1 all the way to Hard Rock 2, they are looking incredibly strong, only dropping 1 score that isn't in the top 7, and that is number 14 on Hidden 1. And then come the DTs, and that's where you see where the problem is, right? Story of South Korea. And in the past, it has always worked out for them. It's never been that big of an issue for them, just by nature of having either 1 or 2 very, very strong players. You know, of course, we're thinking about Worst HR player in 2024, and then Fragrance of Page in 2025, who really, really brought that roster together and gave them the success that we've seen for 2 years at this point. Now the question is the new blood really going to be enough to round up the roster? I don't necessarily know. I think this South Korean roster is going to face a lot of issues, and there's going to be a lot of shoe filling. You know, being part of a dynasty that has dominated 3WC for the past 2 years. That's a lot of pressure, especially if you're the newer players. So therefore, you know, as a South Korea stan, I think I'm really, really hoping that we see their new bloods in My Keyboard, Mikey Keyboard, Sherbet, and Petite show up. You know, just ignoring, of course, the incredible performances that we're gonna be expecting from Amamiya Kokoro, Alagrisimo, and Parisia during the bracket stage.
Yeah, so let's see how this iteration of South Korea's 3WC roster does. Always exciting to see some brand new faces onto a roster like this that has so much of a talent pool within the country. Let's move on to the number 5 team out of qualifiers. I think one of the teams that people have been waiting to see in this list, it is Germany.
Whoa.
5-man roster for Germany. Runny, Sunny, Fle, Shark, Lion, and Christian here. Number 2 and number 3 on the Hard Rock 1 and Hard Rock 2. So a very, very strong Hard Rock country this year for Germany. Last year, they were top 3. So this is a lower seeding this year for Germany, but not by too much at seed number 5, facing off against Russia in the round of 16.
Yeah, no Kriller makes a huge difference for Germany as one of the huge powerhouses of Germany overall. So Runny Sunny with a number 5, picking up the pieces that Kriller has left on, is really making them run for their money. C5 is nothing to be disappointed about, and against Russia is going to be an incredible matchup to look out for. You have some incredible scores. I mean, this Hard Rock team is going to be absolutely disgusting, considering that number 2 and number 3 on the Hard Rock 1 and the Hard Rock 2, and DTs both 10 respectively a piece for both of those maps. The only downside to this team is just off of the aim control maps that we have, Nomad 2 and Hidden 1, so a little bit of the flow is off for this team.
Yeah, I think this placement from Germany is a big shocker to all of us in the prediction stream, because if you compare this German roster to their previous roster in 2025, you notice not just losing Kriller, but they lose Tim Cagner, they lose Berncat, they lose everybody but Flair. And it's very easy to look at this team and see so many roster changes, and it's like, oh wow, they're cooked. You know, they don't have any of the powerhouses that brought them into C3 in C3 last year. But then, you know, I'm very pleasantly surprised that they're making me eat my words during the prediction stream right now. And we are seeing just incredible performances all across the board. In fact, despite the fact that this is a 5-man roster, I do actually think that this German roster has a lot more roster depth than the numbers may imply. Because you have 4 players who can basically fill a they have a very large combination of players across all their maps, right? Of course, you have Runny Sunny basically in for everything, but then Flare, Sharky, and Lion do very, very well in filling in the holes that each other can't fill. And of course, not to mention, of course, the mandatory DT Slave and Christian being there to bolster the roster on the double time. So overall, this German roster, I'm going to be very, very excited to see how they do in the bracket stage, especially considering how this is probably the most well-rounded roster that we've seen thus far. But not just being strong and well-rounded and yada yada yada, but this roster is also very, very capable on Hard Rock, and I think that's going to be a very good instrument for them going into the bracket stage.
Your fun fact for Germany: Runny Sunny is the highest overall P-score player who played 10 out of 10 maps for their country, actually playing 19 of 19 maps for Germany, since they skipped one of those maps. So props there once again. Let's move on to top 4 as we get into the very tip top of the teams qualifying for the 3-digit World Cup 2026. Seed number 4 this year is Canada. Pikapone, Wandirio, Puppy, also known as Ryuke, CL, Non-Cycle, and Raikai. And I don't even know what that name change is for CL. Look at that real quick.
We're going to look at that.
Yeah, who's this? That is First Blue. I actually, I don't know that I know this person's seal. But looking very, very strong for Canada. Pikapone, number 1 overall P score. Wandirio, number 3 overall. Both of these players very, very strong and well known as incredibly good tournament players in the Canadian scene. Number 2 on Nomad 4 and Hidden 1. Number 3 on Nomad 3 and DT2. Number 4 on Hidden 2. Number 5 on Nomad 1. Lots of very, very strong qualifying placements for Canada. Bit of a fall off into the Hard Rocks and that DT1, but everywhere else in the pool looks very, very good for them.
Yeah, and I believe Pikapone got the SS, showing me on my stat sheet, but What an incredible performance. Number 1 overall across 7 maps. You got to give props for the mechanics as well. DT2 is going to be strong. This tech team, especially in Canada, is not a lot of times I would see, but Nomad 4, incredible number 2 slot. Hidden 1, not surprising at all, especially when you have Juan Dario and Pikapone to do some crazy stuff there, as well as Ryuk coming back to play 3WC, putting up scores such as Hidden 1 as well, top scoring that for his team. But what an absolute joy that this Canadian team has been able to improve on their roster and get team scores like these. And see number 4 is going to be a good year for Canada for 3WC. Fortunately, the Hard Rocks and that DT1 is going to put them down just by a little bit, but nonetheless, incredible improvement, and I'm excited to see them this year.
Yeah, that's great, but there's a bit of a South Korea syndrome that is plaguing this Canadian roster. From number 1 to all the way to Hidden 2, this roster is insane. Like, this is where Pikapon and Mondario really shine, and it shows, you know, both of them just really hitting all the high points of all of these maps and getting them, and ensuring that they never drop below top 5 on these 6 maps. And then you move into the mechanics, you move into Hard Rock 1 to DT2, and that's where you really see the struggle. That's where you sort of, Wandario and Pikapon sort of lose their presence. I mean, I say that, and then, you know, Pikapon hitting 1.1 mil and Wandario hitting 1 mil on Hard Rock 2 respectively. But my point still stands, right? The how well Canada does pardon me, into the bracket stage is going to be solely dependent on how well they can play into their weaknesses, how well they can cope with their weaknesses moving forward, especially into the later SRs. I think one of their best tools for doing so is definitely going to be Ryuk. We were talking about it in the prediction stream. We do not know how good Ryuk is coming back, and I don't think that these qualifier results are the best representation of Ryuk's skill as a player. It's important to remember this guy was top 10 in the world at some point, and so these mechanics match should be light work for them. So how well they do back, how much they are able to de-rust throughout the course of this tournament is definitely going to dictate how well Canada does into a lot of their mechanics picks later on in the tournament. But, you know, incredible improvement. I thought Canada was honestly going to be one of the weaker teams this year, but I have once again been proven completely wrong, similar to Germany. Congratulations on the seed 4.
Yeah, and I'll even say, right, like, yeah, the Hard Rocks are poor for them, but with a DT2 score like that, I don't think it's necessarily a mechanics issue, right? This team has one of the best speed teams in the tournament, clearly. So I'm interested to see how far they can go, and I'm hoping they can take it a little farther than 4th, obviously. Canada shirt on in the profile picture, so let's hope. And now on to one other fun fact. Canada had the second most flopped run on run 2. Yes, I'm calling you out. Yeah, they got number 2 on Hidden 1, but guess what? They flopped by 930k on run 2 at Canada. Let's get some consistency. Come on, guys. Let's get some consistency. All right, let's move on. Number 3, into the top 3.
My bad. My bad.
Into the top 3.
My bad. Hold on.
On to Chile. The only reason Chile qualified so high is because I was not there to glaze them during the prediction stream. Seed number 1 on Hidden 1, number 2 on both DTs for this Chilean roster.
That is a scary roster. One of the other 5-man rosters in this tournament so far, and they get top 3. That's when you have to realize that this team is scary. Gonza can play everything. Alpha, you can play everything. Nikode can also play as well as the DTs too, but unfortunately, you do have a lot better players for DT Fifi as well. All players at the top 100, their core on the top 40, and especially that Hidden 1. Off of, we just saw Canada number 2 for that Hidden 1. So this is the team that did better than Canada on Hidden 1. So it's a little bit scary. Mechanics, not an issue. Hard Rock, not an issue. The only problem that they have right now is a little bit of flow on the Nomad 2, but shouldn't translate that badly since that Hidden 1 is sort of familiar to that Nomad 2. Incredible placement, incredible improvement as well, but let's see if they don't get upset this year as they did last year.
Yeah, my before I get into my evaluation, Alfie, my bad. I'm sorry for ever doubting you, my brother. Anyways, jokes aside,
I was not familiar
this
with the game.
this Chilean roster very clearly is a 3-man carry roster plus fills, right? You have Gonza, Alfio, and Nakori. We were already anticipating this trio in the prediction stream. We just didn't quite understand the sheer scale of their ability to really strong man Chile all the way up. And, you know, it's very easy to talk about their successes as a team, but I would like to draw attention to the few underperformances in this qualifier. That's the number 20 on Nomad 2 and the number 15 on Nomad 4. Now, I do have a lot of confidence in this carry trio of Gonza, Alfia, and Nakori, but at the same time, I fear that it's another Brazil situation where they are very, very reliant on this core 3, and if one of these players have a bad day going into a later SR, it could be very, very dangerous for Chile because they have no one else. But for what it's worth, on the specialist maps that the specialists are here to play, Fifi on the double time and Hana Yumi for, you know, Nomad 1, Nomad 2, and both hard rocks, they do very well. So at least in this aspect, you can have some form of security that Chile are going to be looking good into at least the hard rocks and the double times as the tournament draws on.
Yeah, you know, look, after 2021, I'll believe it when I see it. Let's get to the bracket stage. Last year they qualified, and to prove my point, last year they qualified 5th and then placed top 16. So, Chile, surely this is the year. Let's lock in.
I mean, you know, it's
Finals?
important. The thing about investing is that you gotta invest while it's low. You know, they're making you doubt, but invest now.
That's true. That's true. I don't need 2021. I got last year right here on the screen. So let's. This Chilean team though, this Chilean team does look very good, and I hope the best for them. As with Canada,
They're praying.
I'm going to also give a fun fact / call out on this hidden one. They were number 1, but that was on their second run. On their first run, they flopped this score by 750k. So, you know, same deal as Canada, exact same map as well. Something about that hidden one. I don't know what it is.
Hey, man, you're
but
comparing
gave the top
FCs,
teams some
man.
trouble this qualifiers. All right, on to our top 2. Second place out of qualifiers in the 3-digit World Cup this year. A team that traditionally far outperforms their OWC team. It is Hong Kong. Last year, not even playing. This year, seed number 2 with Misha Awa, A21, F2X, and Suwagi playing, but Max Birio actually the top performer in this qualifiers for Hong Kong. Number 1 on the Nomad 2 and the Hard Rock 2 for Hong Kong. And number 19 on the Nomad 1, number 14 on the DT 1, but still about 2 million team score on both of those. So despite low placements, pretty solid team scores across the entirety of this qualifiers pool.
Yeah, I mean, this is the closest as we're going to get to all top 10 placements for a team, especially with this roster, and especially with Max and Misha Awa. You're definitely not going to have bad performances in this bracket stage, but it all depends. Are you going to perform well in the bracket stage? New Zealand is the round of 16 matchup, so that's going to be an exciting matchup to watch nonetheless. Hard Rock 2, Nomad 2, as Dio said, those are incredible scores, and especially on those maps of that caliber. It is going to be an absolute joy watching this Hong Kong roster shred through the bracket.
Words cannot describe how hype I was. I viscerally jumped when I saw Hong Kong submit this roster. I mean, if there was ever a main character of 3WC this year, it had to be Misha Awa, right? But not even just Misha Awa. We talk all up about Misha Awa, but I'd like to highlight Max Berio. I don't think any one of us in the prediction stream really drew that much attention to this player, but I mean, we are eating our words right now. Number 2 overall, only behind Peekapon. Incredible, phenomenal stuff. And then you look at the rest of the roster. I mean, Max Burial, Mishawa, yes. And then you have the old guard of Hong Kong coming back. They saw what happened in OWC and decided it's time to lock in A21, F2X, and Suwagi, all three of them coming in for this Hong Kong roster. However, you know, as much as I love the Hong Kong Glaze to the end of days, I do want to, of course, mention the No Mod 1 and double time weaknesses overall. This is either one of two things. It's either a weakness on aim mechanics, or it's a weakness in terms of aim consistency. Either way, you know, Hong Kong is definitely going to have to play around these weaknesses, and I do think as the later SRs go, as the SR starts to climb, could definitely see them, you know, coping a lot better, especially against other rosters. But I guess we'll just have to wait and see. Will Hong Kong be able to, you know, really give us a show after what happened in OWC this year? Well, that'll be the main question. But oh boy, it's coming. I feel it.
Yeah,
It's coming.
Last thing, Hong Kong, of course, was the second place team in 2023 and first place in 2022. So a team with another very long history in three-digit World Cup. This is also a team, and I'll do the same call out that I did for Canada and for Chile on the hidden one. Hong Kong, Flop City on the hidden one. You know, number 5 overall on the first run, minus 655k on run 2. Unlucky, and let's just go on. Let's just go on to our number 1 seed. Everybody knows who it is already. It is the United States, seed number 1 out of qualifiers in the three-digit World Cup 2026. The entire team that actually played qualifiers in the top 50 of P scores overall, Decatur not even playing qualifiers, and the USA still gets number 1 overall. Number 1 on Hard Rock 1 and DT 1, as well as number 2 on Nomad 3 and number 3 on Hidden 2, as well as top 4 on 2 other maps, the Hidden 1 and that Hard Rock 2. And you know what the funniest thing is for the United States? I can't even put a run 2 on blast for them, because there's not a single map where they had a most flopped run on run 2, nor a most improved on run 2 throughout this entire pool. So not only extremely high placements on everything across the pool, but also very consistently high placements on everything across the whole pool.
Dio is just basically describing that this team basically has no weakness. The depth, of course, the OWC technically roster is just an absolute monster as it is. I mean, Decatur not playing is a very scary thing to see. No scores even played. Where did this guy go? He wasn't even available for the qualifiers, but nonetheless, they improved in scores. 2 number 1s, 1 number 2, and 1 number 3. Only lowest score is on DT2 for mechanics, but I don't believe that's going to be a map that you should pick into United States, as you still have incredible players for a map like that one.
You look at this roster of 6, and the only word I can think of, 4 letters, is fear. Right, every single player, it's a statement for every single one of your players to be top 50 in the individual rankings, despite not having anyone in the top 10 or in the top 5. You know, it's not because they're weak, it's because literally every single one of these players could be fielded for a map. They could create like I don't know, 5 choose 3 combinations of rosters, 6 choose 3 combinations of rosters on every single map, and hell, they'd still probably top 5 seed. That's the level of dominance that we're talking about with this US roster. I don't even need to talk about Decatur not being here, because let's be real, they could have played down 1 more player and they could have probably still seed 1. That's how absurd this roster is. The story of 3WC this year is, will any team be able to prove us wrong going into the bracket stage? Will any team be able to, you know, even take, I don't even say take a match, take a point of the US this year? It's going to be a tough bout for every team not named the United States, and you know, it's tough. It's tough to watch. It's tough to watch this kind of roster go. I hate you, Pez. I hope you're watching.
Yeah, that's there's not much more to say, right? This is the team that was second last year, only to the South Korean roster of yore, with players like Fragrance of Page still on the roster from last year. South Korea this year notably missing some of their star power that they had last year. And so the United States now, I think, very obviously a candidate to win it. That said, this South Korea team still has a lot of the same players or similar players, especially Amamiya Kokoro and Allegrisimo. You still have, I think, a contender in Hong Kong this year with some of their best players coming back. And you have some real interesting results in terms of average score, with the USA actually being the highest average score up at 1,979,000. And Chile being the second highest average scoring team in the qualifiers at 1,959,000. So there's definitely some other candidates for a win here. I think the top three looks very competitive. I do think Canada is going to be... It's going to be tough for, I think, a lot of other teams to break in. South Korea is an obvious candidate with some late stage scaling. Canada potentially as well, being that number 4. Germany potentially as well in that top 5. But I think definitely this year does look United States favored by a wider margin than in a lot of previous years of the 3-digit World Cup.
They're done with getting second, Dio. They're done with getting second.
I think so
see
too.
OWC 2018. Oh.
This is the year where they're gonna kind of put a statement.
A statement indeed. But I guess we'll have to wait and see. Once again, congratulations to all the teams that managed to qualify, and huge shout outs to all the teams that actually played qualifiers, you know. 3WC is always a special rank range where qualification is very difficult, but at the same time, it is still the top echelon of players, and I think anybody who managed to make it on a roster this year should be more than proud of themselves for being here to play the qualifiers in general. But yeah, any last words from my dear casters before we move over to the showcase happening very, very soon?
I'm excited. I'm excited for this year. This year is about to be good.
Yep.
Yeah, very excited for this year of the 3-digit World Cup. So we are going to take a short break in between the qualifier results and the round of 16 map pool showcase. We're going to be starting up soon with that. Thank you very much to everyone for watching. Thank you to Gami and Exia for casting this alongside me, and of course to Shadoos for streaming. And we will be back very soon with the round of 16 map pool showcase.